Hello and welcome to B for Education. Today's video is going to be about the recipe for an outstanding lesson. Now I've chosen the word recipe because I'm going to use a lot of examples about food. I'm really sorry if you get really hungry by the end of this video. Let's start off by looking at the key components of your outstanding lesson. First, you need to set clear objectives. Second, you need to have a plan. And that plan includes a beginning, a middle, and an end. Similar to a recipe where you have a starter, a main, and dessert. You also need to include differentiation. And last but not least, you need to embed different skills into the lesson. Let's look at the first component, setting clear lesson objectives. These lesson objectives are the goals of your lesson. If you've done your teacher training, then you'll be familiar with our friend Bloom. The 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy helps us to decide what we want our learners to think, to learn, and to understand by the end of the lesson. So keep that in mind as you write down your objective. These objectives should also be measurable, and they'll be largely based on how well you know your learners and the knowledge that the group has and where you want them to go from this lesson. By making your objective measurable, you could perhaps ask learners to describe something, and then to take them even further, you may ask them to evaluate. For example, I could ask my learners to describe 2 types of research methods, and then ask them to evaluate one of those research methods. Your objectives will link clearly to your topic and the criteria, perhaps of an assessment in which they're learning about. The better you get to know your learners, the more that you can create objectives that are differentiated. But we'll talk more about that later. Next, let's look at your plan. Just like a good menu, you need a starter, a main, and a dessert. Therefore, as mentioned before, you will need a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning of the lesson can include a recap of previous learning and also a starter activity to introduce the new topic or new theme of the lesson. It can also introduce the lesson learning objectives. I'll do a whole other video on starter activities because I believe this is really key to a lesson and can keep learners engaged right from the beginning of the lesson. The middle of the lesson is really the main course. This will embed all the skills that you want them to learn and also include all the objectives and how they'll be achieved. I tend to create activities that link directly to my objectives. This makes it a little bit easier for me. I can see that where my students are and how they're achieving the objectives. It's important to also include some assessments. It could be small formative assessments where it helps learners to meet the objective. You may choose to do an activity that meets all your objectives or some of them, but you must remember to ask questions to see if your learners have truly understood the topic and also met the objectives. It may be good to periodically show the learners the objectives and show them how they're meeting those objectives through the lesson. Now the dessert, the end of the lesson. This is where you consolidate all the learning that's happened. This is where you clearly link the learning to the objectives and help them to see the journey that they've made throughout the lesson. You may choose to ask questions, create a short assessment, perhaps a Kahoot, and a quiz that they can engage with, or you may create an exit ticket where they have to put down the information of what they've learned before they can leave. However you choose to end your lesson, make sure it's engaging because it's likely what the learners will remember and help them to look forward to the next lesson. Now let's look at differentiation. Differentiation is very important in the lesson because you want all your learners to access the information that you're giving and be able to fully engage with it. Differentiation is especially useful for our learners who have learning difficulties, who are from an EAL background and have many other challenges. When you're able to differentiate well, students get the most out of the lesson. However, if you're new to teaching, don't worry, this will become easier over time as you get to know your learners. I don't know about you, but I love food that's full of flavour, and that's what a lesson should be. It should be full of different elements and different skills that students need to learn to equip them for the wider world. In a lesson, there are many things that you can include that can add a little bit of spice. So make sure that you include the following in your lesson. Within your lesson, you need to embed maths, English, and also ICT. You need to also promote equality and diversity. Embed employability skills, and also include a cross-curricular approach where you include ideas from other topics that the students may be studying. For example, if you're teaching psychology and you're doing neuropsychology, you can mention things about the brain that students may be learning in their science lesson. Now, I know you're thinking, how is that even possible? In a 1 hour lesson, a 2 hour lesson, but it is possible. And like I said, if you're new to teaching, some of these things may be a little bit harder, but will get easier over time. Now, I'm not recommending that you shoehorn these things into your lesson where they're not relevant, but you should look for naturally occurring opportunities within your theme, within your lesson, and your objectives to see if you can include these things. For example, you may include statistics about a topic that you're doing, or you may include a poem and then look at the themes within the poem and how they link to what you're learning during that lesson. All of these are naturally occurring ways that you can include some of these elements into your lesson. Now, I will make an additional video on how you can embed each of these different things that I've mentioned, but I hope this video has helped you to look at the components of an outstanding lesson. Please let me know what you think in the comment section and any ideas or things you'd like me to do a video on. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe.